The Buzz with Jess Lujan.
We're back with my in-studio guest, of course, President of Guam Hotel and Restaurant Association, Mary Rhodes. Thank you again, Mary. We're continuing our conversation, of course, about healthcare, health insurance for the hotel and restaurant industry, based on the bill that's introduced, Bill 359. Which yourself and the industry has come out and says, why are you targeting us? Because, you know, when you look at Gov Guam being the largest employer, you guys second to the largest, we have big organizations out here as well, maybe not quite as big, but bigger national chain companies as well. They're not targeted as well, and they shouldn't be. Really, they shouldn't be. We entice them to come over here. We make sure they pay fairly and provide their employees fair opportunity, and in regards to benefits and all this, and that's where labor comes in. Make sure you're adhering to all labor laws and standards and all that. So I don't see. I mean, there are violations here and there, and that's why the Department of Labor exists for those violations. But holistically, I don't think there are violations. I don't think that there are massive undertakings of violations out there, Mary.
well, no, there aren't. And that's the thing. That's what we always advocate.
Mm-hmm.
We advocate the issues to share what the industry does as a whole. And whenever we are further taxed or the threat of being further taxed, we speak out strongly, because we have to remind everybody, especially the legislature, about really tourism industry has been the only industry that has grown in the last 40 years and continues to grow. And the legislature is really supposed to create laws that will further grow our economy, so it can bring in taxes, not to further tax an industry that already has been doing so well and continues to see challenges, but really rises above all that and remains competitive. For Guam to compete with Southeast Asia, it's very difficult, because we are subject to all of the federal and local mandates of being part of the U.S. government, but we have to compete with our Southeast Asian counterparts, and their labor is labor and services are actually a lot less than what Guam has to deal with. And so when you talk about really what are we supposed to be doing, we're supposed to be growing our economy. We're supposed to grow our market so that we can increase that tax base. And so that's really what I implore the senators to look at, in not just before this next election, when we go to the general, but in this next legislature, is we have to look beyond just our short-term challenges. We have to really look at our long-term strategy, address the issues at GMH so that we don't have to worry about these types of things, and really look at tourism as a partner and not necessarily as the cash cow, always bringing in the money and being willing to pay for all the extra subsidies that we need to cover with the market.
Now let me ask you this, because often they refer and say, hey, customer service, and customer service is important, whether you have one employee versus two and all this. What is the ratio of guests per worker, per employee, here in Guam versus, say, maybe in Asia?
Right. Our statistics that we put out, what you see in Southeast Asia, it's usually 6 employees to one guest.
6 to 1 guest, okay.
Right. And that's because the labor costs and the operational costs are way lower than Guam's. What you see on Guam is 1 employee to 2 rooms.
1 to 2 rooms.
1 to 2. So there's a huge difference in the level of service that's provided, at least in the minds of the customer, but in the total number of people who are employed at the property. So it does directly attribute to guest satisfaction and the service level. And so I think that's a really important point, is this is what we're up against and what we have to be, what we have to continue to compete in those types of market conditions. That combined with diversifying our market with low-cost carriers and getting less on the customer as far as total spend. So really, yes, the market's doing well, but we have our own challenges. But what we want to remind everybody is that work with us as an industry, help us grow this market so that we can really increase the labor pool within our industry so that we can employ more people. You talk about creating the market conditions that attract investors. These types of bills do not attract our investors. They further frustrate them because why are we subject to one type of legislation or one type of law or fees that doesn't exist anywhere else in the world? I know that we always try to do things that are different, but creating laws that make it barriers to entry for the market is not the way to conduct business or to grow the market. And if you look at really even what the governor's tried to do with Believe Guam and all of that, none of this really translates in what we're trying to introduce at the legislature.
Well, one of the things I've seen, I'll take Philippines as an example. Once or twice a year, I see some of these bigger chain stores back there. I mean, you have lines going around the buildings, like, 3 or 4 times. And I would ask, people in the know, I'll say, why is that? I mean, is there a massive hiring? I said, normally once a year, even twice a year, what happens is all the employees there are very limited term employees, okay? Because there's so many people, and everyone that's lining up, minimum to get in is a college graduate, okay, to get in. So they're lining up. So I think it's either 6 months or a year, they come up for renewal. A few of them get hired on to maybe to move up or stay, but in general, there's a new batch that comes in all the time, constantly come in. And they said that's how they get around, that's how these companies get around offering benefits to their employees. Is there's a constant new pool of employees, and they can do that because they have laws there that say you have to offer benefits after a certain period of time.
Right.
But how they get around there is they give you a short-term contract, and you can only work for a certain amount, and then they'll reevaluate you, and then of course they'll say you're out. Only the few chosen will go on. Otherwise, they change the structure again. New employees, and they don't have to offer them the benefit package.
That is a real problem with even this piece of the legislation, both from the insurance side as well as the employer side. By introducing legislation that mandates benefits for part-time and casual employees, you're going to have adverse selection with the insurance companies, and they're not going to really like that because it's going to attract every employee to just have part-time jobs elsewhere, and then they can get fully insured. It doesn't make sense, especially from the employer's perspective, that maybe their premiums would be more than their actual paycheck. And so employees would choose not to even contribute towards that. So it's, again, not addressing the problem. I think that Bill 359 should be voted against by the senators, and it should definitely not be put on a referendum for the rest of the public to vote on, because it's not a community issue. This is really specific to one business sector, and Bill 359 should be voted against on.
Be right back.